I can tell you this, I would not be ordering yogurt on a DoorDash like my daughter does when there's a yogurt store right down the street that she can walk to. Never done that as a kid. Not that it existed, but even the thought of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Reese, it's right down the street.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Z as Johnny.
It girls. Maddie Brezowitz and Johnny Teeler.
I'm Lit Girl. Podcast with a couple It Girls.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Lit Girl. Podcast with a couple It Girls. It Girl.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the It Girls podcast hosted by Mercury. And we are so excited to have a guest that I really don't even know yet. So I'm going to let Maddie Brezowitz take the way and introduce Miss Tracy Benford.
Miss Tracy Benford. She and I talked in probably October, Tracy?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. So Tracy is a partner at Goldman Sachs, which we can get into a little bit more in the episode, but there's about 400 to 450 partners, if I read that correctly.
Yeah.
And Goldman Sachs is a powerhouse in the financial institution world. They have 50,000 employees. So the fact that Tracy's in the top percent of that is insanely impressive. And on top of that, she played basketball at Northwestern, won a Big Ten championship, and she got her MBA from Stanford. So we are so excited to have you on today and hear about your story. And, Z and I want to do this podcast to learn from winning women. That was the whole thing. Like, we just want women who know how to win. And not only did you win in your college career in sports, which we're kind of closer to that era of your life, but you also won in your career. So, give us a little bit about you, Tracy.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you guys, Z and Maddie. It's great to be part of your podcast. And I think it's amazing what you guys are doing. And the time is now for women in sports. So it's all good.
Absolutely.
So I, as Maddie said, I've been at Goldman Sachs for 28 years, a partner there. I was in what people call sales and trading, the institutional equity and fixed income markets, covering some of our largest asset managers and hedge funds and pension endowments across the Midwest, Canada, and the Southwest. So I did that in Chicago for all but one quick year in my career. I spent some time in New York, but I loved it, and I've loved Goldman Sachs, and it's much more women now than there was back when I started, but it's been a great place for me to grow and learn, and you get challenged by amazing people, both men and women. And it's really helped me become who I have become today. I grew up in a really small town in Southern Ohio, not far from Kentucky, actually. Yeah. I went to sort of a public high school in my hometown, and not a lot of people left my town to go to college. And so it was just one of those things that I had sort of this chip, would probably be a strong word, chip on the shoulder, but really wanted to get out of my hometown, not because it wasn't great. It was a great place to grow up, but just because I wanted to do something more, and I wanted to get to a big city. And Chicago was the closest big city I knew about. So I headed that way.
Go ahead, Matt. Oh, well.
And for those of you guys that don't know finance that well, to give it in layman's terms, what Tracy did was sales and trading. So the reason Tracy and I talked is because I was in sales and trading too. And essentially it's I'm trying to, do you have a good analogy for it, Tracy, for people who have no idea about?
So, most people have, maybe people have investments, they have a mutual fund, they have some sort of investments. In sales and trading, you're covering those clients that are managing money for large institutions or for large investors. And so, it's basically, if you think about, I liken a little bit about a control tower situation. You've got all these computers, you've got all this information coming at you, and you're trying to distill it and get it to the investors so they can make the right decisions or good decisions. You're also helping them think about trying to make to meet the different parameters that they've promised to investors. This probably isn't layman's, is it? This is
I was thinking the same thing.
He's like, what are you talking about?
Oh goodness, here we go.
I don't know how to say it easily. It's really, it's first of all, it's really fun. It is for anybody out there thinking about it, but it's really a fast paced. It's almost like being on a team, to be honest. It's really fast paced. You're all sort of trying to be the best that you can be and cover your clients, but the goal is to all work together to help each other out. And it's, when you think about, I'm sure people look at the stock market and watch it, like we're in that every day. We're talking about currencies every day, energy market every day, credit product every day. If a company wants to, this may be probably the easy example. If a company wants to go public, they want to do an IPO. The way that happens is our investment banking team will work with the client. They'll hire Goldman Sachs to take them public. And then in the sales and trading job, your job is to sell that company's stock to your client. So you're on the phone talking about, all the characteristics of the company, all the financials of the company, and you're selling that stock to investors to purchase. And then there's all kinds of other products, but that's probably the simplest one that people are probably most familiar with.
Agreed. That was good. It is a complicated area to be, but like I think the way you described it as like being a team, it is super fast paced, super intense. It's kind of like that old stereotypical, obviously it looks different, but like a big trading floor with like very collaborative environment. So, really cool space to be.
I always feel like, and it happens more often than you could probably imagine, Tracy, where it's me, Maddie, and someone else that knows finance better than I do, like light years better than I do. And I'm like, what am I even doing in this conversation? Like, really, it just becomes a two-person conversation and I'm like a fly on the wall. But now I feel like being around Maddie, like the past 2 years, I'm like, I know what public means and I know what that means. And so I feel a little bit better equipped to be a part of this conversation. Yeah. I feel less like a fly on the wall. So this is great.
Well, the good news is, and I don't want to demean myself or what Maddie's going to do, but like, it's not rocket science, like putting men on the moon. It is something that is super learnable and it's really fun. It's really fun. I mean, we hire a ton of athletes because the pace is so fast. You have to be super disciplined in sales and trading or investment banking. And you have to be able to work with people. And by the way, you have to realize that you're going to get constructive criticism and there's no one better than an athlete who understands like things are going to happen and things are going to go wrong. And people are trying to help you, not trying to make you feel like you're a failure. And a lot of non-athletes sometimes have a hard time when they make a mistake, like taking constructive criticism and then moving on and knowing that everyone's there to help them, not to make them feel like they've made a mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah. Z, don't discredit yourself. She probably like 2 years ago, didn't have any investments. Now she's got some investments, she's really come a long way in her financial journey. So
Maddie Brezowitz, I guess. Anyways, well, Tracy, you talked a little bit about growing up in a small town in Ohio and your parents are super blue collar. Me and Maddie grew up in a similar way, it sounds like, and we kind of talk about a lot how watching our parents work and do all the things that they do kind of instilled values in us that people around us don't have. So in what way did your upbringing shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I talk about this a lot because I have two kids now, 19 and 17, and they're growing up very differently than I did. And I worry about that because I grew up with a very strong work ethic. My dad worked in a factory and he would work third shift because it paid like 3 times the hourly rate and all these things. But the difference, I think, between what they worked to support a family. They didn't work for a career. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. It just was very different. And they really, when I wanted to play baseball, because I'm kind of old, but back then there wasn't softball, t-ball. And so I was the only girl I said, I want to play t-ball. And they're like, okay, we'll sign you up. They just always supported everything I wanted to do. My brother is not an athlete at all. He was in the marching band for his entire high school. So, but they worked hard. They put their family first, which I may not always do that. I got to work on that. But they put their family first. And I don't think my parents ever missed a sporting event and ever missed my brother's marching band competitions. Like they were just there in every way, shape, or form. And I think that kind of made me who I am in the sense that, I just always felt that I was supported and someone had my back. And, and my dad used to always say something, when I would say, well, we can't afford to do that. He's like, Tracy, if we need to do something, we'll do it. It's not like, it's not going to break the bank. And they just instilled this idea that you work, you save, and there are more important things. And I wish I could say I take that, translate it into my raising my children, who my daughter's not even talking to me right now. But she literally I made her get out of this room. She's like, what? So I think it did really make me feel supported and that I could do anything I wanted to. And when it's a funny story on this T-ball team, we had a summer party at the end, a swimming party. And I came in a girl swimming suit. And all the guys were like, oh my God, she's a girl? And like super, and that was the first time the boys on the team, my coach knew obviously, but the boys on the team realized that I was not a boy. But I don't know how many parents would have done that back in, the 70s, and, sign their daughter up to play boys. I'm sure they had to talk to, the T-ball organization and the coach. And so, I just always felt like whatever I wanted to do, I was going to be able to do it regardless of money or location or schooling. And it instilled confidence in me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That resonates so hard with me. And Z kind of touched on it. Like, our families are similar to, I think, how you grew up. Like, I think we talked about this in our call, Tracy, but my parents are both teachers. So that's my whole family, I say, is like a teacher or a farmer. That's like the two careers. The only two careers I knew growing up were teachers and farmers. And so, like, seeing that every day, like, we could afford things, but, like, everything that we were able to afford, like, there was sacrifices with that. Like, we never went on family vacations. I never saw the ocean till college. And so, like, things like that I would not trade for the world. Like, it's the reason that I went to Kentucky and everything else. But, same as you, Tracy. Like, I have aspirations to have a career. My parents had a career too, but, I think the same way. Like, when I have kids, how can I still use those values, but just like, in a different way. So it's a great point.
Yeah. I can tell you this, I would not be ordering yogurt on a DoorDash like my daughter does when there's a yogurt store right down the street that she can walk to. Never done that as a kid. Not that it existed, but even the thought of it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Reese, it's right down the street.
We get that. We get that.
Yeah. That's blowing my mind.
Yeah. There's an Amazon package every day. I'm like, that's not free, Reese, right? That actually is on our card.
Is Reese 19 or 17?
She's 17.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Tracy, did you say you had two daughters or a daughter and a son?
I have a 19-year-old son and Reese, my 17-year-old daughter.
Awesome. Yeah.
And what is your 19-year-old son doing right now?
He's at Northwestern, actually. Just finished his freshman year. He's loving it.
Good for him.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Speaking of Northwestern, you talked that you got your undergrad at Northwestern, played basketball there. So your dad's coworker told you to apply to Northwestern, and you got in and went there without ever visiting the campus. And it seems like everything's worked out pretty perfectly from there. And you played basketball there, and everything fell perfectly into place. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in my high school didn't go to college, and if they did, they didn't leave the state. So it was like Bowling Green, Miami, Ohio, OU, Wright State, all these schools. And this was actually my dad's foreman, whose son had gone to Northwestern. And he said he knew of me and knew that I did well in school. And he's like, you should really apply there. I think it'd be a great thing. So sure enough, I came back. I applied to Northwestern. I applied to other places too, obviously. And I got in. I mean, it was much easier in 1987 than it is for people now, I think. It's a little bit harder to get into these schools. I don't know if I could get in now, but I ended up going there sight unseen. My parents drove me up there, moved into a dorm, and I didn't get recruited there to play basketball. And so, I joined a sorority. I was doing all this stuff. I was an applied math major, and I wanted to do that, and athletes didn't really do that. So I started school. I joined a sorority. I was making my friends, but I was playing club basketball. And my freshman year, they had, I think it was 5 people that weren't eligible to play. 2 from academic and 3 were injured. And so they held a tryout. And the club coach said, you should really go try out for that. You should try out. So I went, it was like 200 women, and I tried out and I made the team. So I called my parents. I'm like, I just made the Northwestern women's basketball team. They're like, oh, come on. back then, I'd never lifted a weight. It was shocking. So I'm on the basketball team. I go in the locker room first time. They have the locker there with all your stuff in it and your name on it. And I was like, oh my God, this is the real deal. And then I went to my first strength workout and I thought I was going to die. I couldn't move for 3 days. And the other funny thing about it is I didn't have a car. And so the two assistant coaches, and I was in this really small applied math major, and it was in the south part of campus. And for people that don't know anything about Northwestern, the basketball stadium is not even on campus. It's a good bit away. So those two coaches had to pick me up every day and drive me to practice. Jesus. They hated me. I mean, they hated me. They would say, because I was in a sorority and no one else was, they were like, Pearls, get in the car. Let's go. We're going to be late. And so they take me but they became very good friends, after I graduated. But it was fun. It was a wonderful experience. I felt in a way, I got the best of both worlds. And then at the end of my first year, they asked me to stay on and gave me a partial scholarship. So
wow.
It was awesome.
Insane.
Wow.
That's something you had seen in a Disney Channel original movie.
Yeah, exactly. I should make a movie. I've got free time.
You should. Yeah. And then you'll come back on our podcast and you'll spread the word and talk about how we shared the story first, right?
Yes.
Exactly.
It's a win-win.
That's awesome. That is so cool. And okay, when you sent us your bios or kind of a rundown, so after that, you got recruited to Salomon out of Northwestern.
Yeah. So the major was applied math. The investment banks all recruited in that major.
Really?
So yeah.
Okay, so I wondered, and this is not to age you by any means, but when you said Salomon Brothers, for those non-finance nerds, I listened to the Liar's Poker audiobook, and that's what my brain goes to. For anyone that's listening that doesn't know what Liar's Poker is, it's the 1980s version of Wall Street, and I'm sure it's glamified and somewhat fictional, but some of it's probably non-fictional too. And so in my vision, when you said you worked at Salomon Brothers, in the, what was that, the 90s or the 80s?
Yeah, 91 to 93. Yeah.
I'm just thinking all male. I am not seeing male there. So they recruited you though. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I interviewed with a bunch of investment banks. I really liked the people at Salomon Brothers. Here's the other funny thing. Because Northwestern, it's a lot different now, but then there was I'd never taken an accounting class. So imagine, I had never looked at an income statement, a balance sheet, cash flow statement, which for those of you that don't know, that's really important to have that skill set when you start.
Experience, yes. I would be a lost cat right now.
So they said, we want you to come work for us. We want you to go find an accounting class and do it pass fail. So I did that just so I'd have some exposure.
Yeah.
And I was the only female analyst. I was in the Chicago office also, which was a little bit smaller than New York, but I had a great group of people that I worked with, and I loved it. And, but I was on the investment banking side, which was a little more, buttoned up kind of thing. But the sales and trading is what Liar's Poker is about, the sales and trading side of the business, specifically the fixed income business. And they were known as the gunslingers. I went how I got interested in sales and trading is I spent some time over there before I went to business school just to see what it was about. And it was a different world. I mean, screaming, throwing phones, kicking things. I mean, that doesn't happen now. And it definitely happened then, it was a totally different world.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And so you did that for 2 years. You did IB for 2 years. And then after that, you went to business school?
Yeah. So I was debating doing a third year. They offered me to do a third year, but I was just ready to go to business school and do something different. And again, back then that was kind of the normal pattern. Now I don't think that's really thought of as the normal way to do it. So I applied to 3 schools and I got in, and I didn't think I'd get into Stanford because I'd only worked for 2 years. And also I just didn't think I'd get in. And I got the letter that I got in. I was like, oh my God, I'm going. That's it. And it was a miserable day in Chicago. It was snowing and raining and winding. And I was like, get me out of here. So, I went. I didn't know anybody. I went out for admit day, met some people, actually met some of my best friends there on that weekend, and went off again, not really knowing anybody out there. One of my friends from Salomon Brothers, he was in the New York office, but we started together. He got off the wait list. So we lived together with 3 other guys who I did not know. It was very funny. It was a weird experience, but it was, I mean, I love Stanford. 2 of the best years of my life. I just had a great time. And you guys can imagine, like, being student athletes at a Division I school, like business school was, I mean, I had so much free time. Like, I'm like, oh my God, this is what normal life is like when you go to school. And it was weird. I filled it with too many things, unfortunately. But it's amazing the difference between your undergraduate experience when you play a sport and like just going to school.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, go ahead, man.
No, all you.
You grew up in Ohio, you go to school in Chicago, and then all of a sudden you just busted over to California. Was that like culture shock for you? Or at that point you had done all the basketball and all the stuff that you felt good enough to do that?
Yeah, I think it was, I would say this. One of the things that for me is out of the ordinary is I usually don't like to take big risks, meaning like do the unknown. Although I guess Northwestern was unknown to me in Stanford, but I got into HBS and a bunch of my friends were going there, and my best friend actually was going there, and we were going to live together. And then I got into Stanford. And I said I'm going to go to Stanford sight unseen, not sight unseen, but without knowing anybody. And that's out of the ordinary for me. Like I was someone that like wanted to get measured by a grade and do all this stuff. And Stanford at the time, which most business schools are this way now, didn't have grades. So I knew that I would go there and I'd take classes, like I'd take classes that were hard for me and new to me, as opposed to doing a route where I'd take everything I already knew how to do. And so it was kind of a leap of faith that I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I never do anything like this. I'm going to go do it. And it was the best decision I ever made. It was awesome. People are great, just have made great lifelong friends. I learned a ton, and not to mention it's pretty sweet in Northern California.
Yeah, and you probably came back like, what, 2 shades tanner too, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it was, people were like, why would you leave? And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I really like the Midwest. It's not, people are like, no one likes the Midwest. I'm like, I do. I love it.
Who says the same thing about me? She's like, you really, I always tell her I want her to move up here. And she's like, you're freaking crazy. I'm from Dallas. Like, why would I ever go up there? Yeah.
It is, this summer's global warming's helping. I mean, we had a pretty mild winter. So.
Tracy, it's actually, I'm glad we've had this conversation. I never even considered business school because times have changed and like, that's not necessarily like something you have to do anymore.
Yeah.
But the last year or so, I have been thinking about business school. So I guess just maybe it's advice for me, maybe it's for someone listening, but would you recommend business school?
So I think you'd ask 5 people and you'd probably get 1 person saying, yes, that's me. And 4 people saying, I don't know if it's worth the investment. Here's what I think. If you're going to go full time. Don't do any part-time programs. It's not worth it. I think it's a great experience. Most people go because they want to change careers. I obviously stayed in finance, but most people like, in hindsight, I probably would have worked a couple more years, would have made me a little more, be able to contribute in certain topics and conversations. But I loved it because the networking aspect, just learning from other people, you're taking 2 years away from working day to day, and you can really see what's out there. And you never have that opportunity, and not even interviewing wise. I just mean talking to your classmates. And like, we had people that were professional athletes in our class. We had people that were comedians. We had people that obviously were investment banking, consulting, and nonprofits. We had doctors who wanted to get into the business side of medicine. Like, you just meet all these fascinating people. One of the guys in my class co-founded eBay, Jeff Skoll. Like, all these really interesting, cool people. And it was a really cool time to be in Silicon Valley in that area. It was 93 to 95. And that was kind of when biotech, private equity, VC were really sort of hitting the radar screen.
Yeah.
So it was really fun. So I do recommend it because I think if nothing else, it's an expensive networking thing.
Right.
But I don't know, you have to kind of bet on yourself. Like I did financial aid, obviously, and I'd saved a bunch of money from Salomon Brothers. And, I just had confidence that I was going to be able to make money and pay it back. that was the one thing that didn't stop me from doing it.
That's awesome. That's good to know because it is an expensive investment in yourself, but the network is kind of priceless though. If you go to
amazing.
Yeah.
You're like pretty decently big time when you just name drop the co-founder of eBay and keep moving like nothing happened.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, I wish I would have been the co-founder of eBay, but that didn't happen.
And she just subtly said, I got into HBS. That's Harvard Business School as well. So
I did hear HBS, and I didn't know what that meant. Again, fly on the wall. So
yeah, we got the best and brightest on our podcast, Taylor.
Well, I don't know about that, but I did study hard at college.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've now, after being an applied math major, I don't even think I can add anymore. I'm like, what is this? It's not good.
Yeah, I can't. Applied math is different. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about Chicago. Again, so like to give some background, Tracy, I know we talked about this, but like I tried the New York thing, right? And like I knew I would get back to the Midwest. And it sounds like your career path kind of was a similar, you had a similar sentiment when you were trying to figure out your career. But you kind of briefed a story that one of your MDs told you, you got to go to New York if you want to do finance. And that was told time and time and time again. How do you feel like being in Chicago shaped your career? And also, I don't know, just talk through the pros and the cons and like why was Chicago kind of your destination for your career?
Yeah. I mean, between my first year of business school, I was a summer associate with Goldman in New York. And so I got my offer after that summer, but my offer was trading, which risk taking in New York, because all the trading resides in New York for the Americas. And so it was in New York. And I said, I really don't want to live in New York. And so I said, I want to live in Chicago. Now, here's the difficult thing, which is why I have a huge sense of loyalty to Goldman. I had interviewed through the San Francisco office, worked in New York. I knew no one in the Chicago office at Goldman Sachs, 0 people. But who later turned out to be the president of Goldman a while ago, John Winkelried, said, well, we'll just put you in Chicago then. If that's where you want to be, we want you to come. I mean, I don't even know if that stuff happens anymore, but it was a much smaller. When I started, we were 10,000 people.
Wow.
Just to give you a sense. And so I was forced upon this poor, person who ran the Chicago office that I was coming out to work for them. And they had summer interns from like Kellogg and U of C. And so in comes me. I don't know anybody. But I just really want to be in Chicago. And at the time, this guy told me that, I would start in New York. I wouldn't start in Chicago. I said, well, I'm not going to be happy in New York, right? I'm just not going to be happy. So I went in Chicago. I worked. And then, Maddie, as you said, I had this partner who was like a mentor to me, or actually more than that, a sponsor for me. And he said, Tracy, you're never going to make MD. You're never going to make partner for sure in Chicago. You have to come to New York. So he was great. And he kept saying, well, here's a job for you. It was basically doing the same thing I was doing in Chicago, but with bigger clients out in New York. And I was like, why would I move to do that? And this happened 3 or 4 times. And then finally he came to me literally like a month after I just gotten married. And he said, okay, this is it. This is the last time I'm going to throw something in front of you. Then I'm done with you, basically. And so it was a really interesting job that was totally different. Same thing. I was forced upon this group. They were interviewing people for this job, which I won't get into because it's not easy. There's no layman way to explain it, but it was more of a grading job and a structuring job. And so I go to New York. I meet my new boss, and I knew a couple of folks in the group just from being at Goldman. And so I go there. I meet my new boss. He was like, who is this woman from Chicago that now works for me? And he became my most favorite boss at Goldman Sachs. He was just such an amazing guy. Same background as us. Grew up in Alabama. Went to University of Chicago. Brilliant guy. And we had so much fun. And but my husband was here and I was there. And so we were commuting every weekend. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to make myself a better person. I'm going to read history books. I'm going to learn a new language. It's going to be great. I sat at LaGuardia and drank beer and ate nachos every Friday, depressed. I was like, what am I doing this for? I'm getting worse. I'm making myself worse. And so after 9 months, I went into this partner's office and I said, hey, I can't do this anymore. I can't commute. And he's like, you've got to be kidding me. It's been 9 months. I'm like, I just can't do it. Oh, the other thing was I just was married and had a bunch of friends in New York. So I was going out every night because I had nothing to, I'd work till 8 or 9. Then I'd go out to dinner with my friends. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm too old for this. So anyway, so I went into him. he started to he told people I had to go back, but they had hired someone to replace me. So this is a better lucky than smart thing. They'd hired someone to replace me, so I didn't have a job to go back to. And so I interviewed with different parts of Goldman, and finally they called me and said, hey, we want to keep you in I was in fixed income at the time. They want to keep you in this business. So we're going to create a job for you. So I created this job. This is going to be really boring, but marketing credit derivatives to default swaps to people.
That's crazy.
Which wasn't really a job. So I won't. But anyway, this is the better lucky than short. If I'd never gone to New York, I wouldn't have met all these other people and these other businesses. So it was kind of lucky. And then when I came back and did this job, all of a sudden I was one of the few people that knew about derivative products and all these things. So they let me cover hedge funds, which were big clients at the time. They do a lot of business. Z's like, what are you talking about? They do a lot of business. And so I literally, had I never gone to New York, I would never have gotten this opportunity with all these really, really important clients to the firm and big clients. And so it was one of those things. And then I made MD the next 2 years after that. And then I made partner in 2010. And so it was, I almost like, I had a chip on my shoulder, like I am going to do this in Chicago.
Right.
What does MD stand for?
Say again?
MD, what does that stand for?
Oh, managing director is MD and PMD is partner managing director.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so like I kind of had a little bit of the chip on my shoulder when I went back that I'm going to prove them wrong, that you can get promoted in Chicago.
Right. Wow.
So it was fun.
I mean, that's inspiring to me. Obviously, you know, I don't have any plans going out in New York, but it sounds like your 9-month stint kind of sets you up for success in ways that you probably couldn't have drawn up yourself. So yeah,
for sure.
There's so many. That's the hardest part with finance is like all the lingo. There's just so much terminology that like get past the terminology. It's not rocket science, but it's just part of it.
No. And it always annoys me that people can't say normal things like, I want to buy that, I want to sell that. There's always a special word for it. I'm like, it's just buying and selling. That's all we're doing.
Exactly. But like MDZ is like, they're everyone's bosses. So they're the managers of like certain groups and divisions and things like that. So that's awesome, Tracy.
Gotcha.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, getting back to like something that I kind of know about, Tracy, you obviously played basketball at Northwestern, didn't really have plans to do that beyond the club level, but now there's probably so many parallels where you're like thankful that that's something that you did, kind of similar to you going to New York. What do you take now from you as an athlete that you use in your job now?
I mean, I think I have a very conscious bias that I'd like to hire college athletes. But listen, I think being on a team and playing at that level, you know, you have discipline. You have you have the ability to juggle a bunch of things at once. You have time management skills that a lot of, you know, people don't think I would have developed without playing at that level. Unless you just have grit, right? Like you're going to lose. You're going to lose games. You're going to make bad plays. You're going to make mistakes. And like, those are real learning experiences that I don't think I would have had just going to college and not being an athlete. And, you know, it also like, it did teach me that like you want to do as well as you can, but it really is about the team at the end of the day. And that's a lot about what work is like. You know, it's really, you really have to work together in any job, not just finance, but any job, you know, broadcasting or whatever it might be. Like, you know, you're going to be surrounded by, but you want to be the best that you can be. But at the same time, there's a bigger goal. And I don't know that I would have had that so instilled in me without sports. And just also the silly things, like I'm used to, you know, as we all were, you're used to getting up at like 5 a.m. sometimes to do a workout. Like, so getting to work isn't that, you know, I'm just used to that. I'm not, you know, because basketball obviously is a winter sport. We didn't go home we went home on Christmas Day, but like you played in a tournament over Christmas. Like it just builds like this discipline and this idea that like, it's more than just about me. It's about the team. It's about being there. It's about supporting each other. And I think that, you know, in any work environment, that's huge to have and just be instilled in you. It's a natural thing. I mean, we hire a lot of athletes and a lot of people that came out of the military. actually,
Mm.
because they also have that same sort of discipline and can juggle a lot of things. And, you're also, you're going to have people that you work with and or that you are your clients that you probably wouldn't be friends with them if you didn't have to be. And
Right.
so you also, like in a team, there might be someone you don't potentially gel with, but you got to figure out a way to relate and work together, and super important to be successful in business.
Yeah. And real quick, Maddie, I was also thinking, like how male dominated finance is. And when we're in college athletics, it's still, as far as women have come, still super controlled by men. And that's where all the attention is. I'm sure it was 10 times worse when you were in school. How does that translate, you having to work harder than men do in your field?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's funny because I noticed it less when I started, even though it was worse then, and more as I got more and more senior. You really see it at the top levels. It was funny. I when I started, I thought of it as a plus. I was different than most everybody else. I like people. I like to be funny. I like to drink beer, and I love sports. Right? I was like a sort of the what you generically would call a man. I was like that person, and so I had. And not all men like that stuff, and not all women, but I happened at that time. That was what I enjoyed doing.
Right.
I'd love to go for a run. I don't love golf, but I'll go play golf. I love to joke around. I love to make fun of people. It's gotten a little more PC since when I started, but that was just who I was. That was my personality. And I also stood out because I was a woman.
Right.
And so for me, I think in the beginning, it was probably more helpful than not. But I think, and this is still the case, and you alluded to it, Z, but like the numbers for all the effort being put in, they haven't gotten that much better at any finance firms. And I'm probably in general in tech, it's probably the same. I read the Ginny Rometty's book, which you should read, Good Power. But talking about her, she was the CEO of IBM, and she was in the tech industry when there were no women. And she's probably, I don't know, she's older than, she's like probably 5 to 10 years older than I am. And so it's a pretty interesting read. But I would say as you get higher and higher up, you do see there's a little more of a ceiling, I think. And I don't think some of this is intentional. It's just, at the top, it's a lot of people have been working together forever, and they happen to many times be men, many times be white men. But, I think it's just going to continue to get better. But when I started, I thought of it as an advantage, actually. I thought, well, there's not many of me. So when they say Tracy, that there's not another Tracy at Goldman Sachs. Like,
Right.
It was kind of a benefit to stand out. And I still think you can use it as a benefit to stand out. And certainly being an athlete as a female is another, positive that makes you stand out from other people.
For sure.
Absolutely, Tracy. I think Z and I both see that in our field. It's like you just have to take advantage of things that you have in your corner, and those are things that we can talk to, and like we don't even need to talk to because people, that's just who we are too. So
Right.
yeah, great point. I was gonna say something about that. I don't remember.
Yeah. But no, I think like being a female athlete is a huge advantage in the workplace, for sure.
Absolutely.
And you're just used to like, and this is really generic, but just things don't ruffle your feathers the same way they might ruffle somebody else's, right? I'm just like, I've got a little thicker skin than maybe I would have had I not played sports,
Yeah.
I remembered what I was going to say, so that's good. I think you were talking about at the top, like how it's still like pretty male heavy. And that's not just for finance. That's
Yeah.
And that's just in the world. And I think a lot of that comes from like the years where we have to have kids, and not that we have to, but if that's a choice to make. And I know Z and I, like, that's like a goal we both want, is to have children someday. So like to get more on your personal life, like how was it for you to juggle that, having 2 kids, running, billions of dollars at one of the best companies in the world? How did you juggle that?
So it's funny, and I've talked a lot about this at Goldman with young women starting out. I think I'll tell you how I juggle it, and I think it's harder. So I got married at 30. I had kids at 35 and 38. So
Wow.
the difference is I think I had a little bit easier because I was established in my career, right? Like I think like I had a reputation. People knew my work. So I think it was easier for me than it's easier when you have it in the beginning of your careers, because there's never going to be the perfect time, right? That's just, I didn't get married till I was 30. And of course, my kids can't hear this, but I didn't want kids, by the way. My husband's like, wait a minute, we talked about this. I'm like, we did? I don't remember that. And my husband also, when I had my son, decided to leave what he was doing, and because he wanted to be at home with his kids. So like most people don't have that. And then he started his own firm. So then he has his own private equity firm. And so, Goldman tells me get on a plane and go to Canada or be in New York or be in London or whatever. I do it. And so Ed's schedule was much more flexible. So yeah. I'll say that mine was a little bit, it's never easy. I also say this, like when I was single, I thought I couldn't balance everything because I wanted to go out and I wanted to do this, I wanted to exercise. And then I got a dog and I'm like, oh my God, now I've got to walk the dog. It's always something that's like, you can't balance. But I was fortunate in the sense that I was established in my career. So I think it's much harder when you're, let's say you get married at 25, 26, 27, and you're starting a new job. And so I think it's just tough. And I would say what I've said to people is like, first of all, I think the world is more accepting of that, both men and women spending more time with their families, particularly that's one of the best things that happened out of COVID, right? Like if you aren't in the office, people don't assume you're smoking cigarettes and eating sandwiches, right? They assume you're working, yeah. Right? And that used to be the case. They're like, well, they must be drunk. I don't know why they're here. But now I think people assume you're actually working from home. So I think that's better. But I think it's hard. I think you just have to prioritize, and the priorities will be different. The priority today is I need to do this with my kids and I have to make sure this is all taken care of. And some days the priority may be, I need to do this trip to Hong Kong or wherever you're going to go. And like, I just got to figure it out. And you will. And I have plenty of friends at Goldman Sachs who were single moms. They got divorced. You will figure it out, but it's not easy. It's just, and I have guy friends who are single dads who have the primary care of kids. It's hard to do it. Mine was relatively easy because I did start in my mid to late 30s. Yeah. So, but as a young person, I think you really have to just figure out your priorities and know that you're going to sacrifice some things in the beginning. But like, now a lot of my friends my age, their kids are out of college, and I'm like, I've got freshman and a junior in high school.
Right, right. I talked to one lady about this one time, and she gave me like really good advice. She said, don't even worry about it until you have a baby in your stomach, because like there's not going to be a good time, and you never know what will happen. So and this is I didn't want kids, and I can't imagine my life without them. Right? It's really fun, and you'll figure it out. You really will figure it out. Like people can do it. Like we've done harder things, and you'll figure it out. Yeah, we can do hard things.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think another thing that we wanted to touch on before we start wrapping up is the number of organizations you're involved in Chicago. I started to write them down, and I was like, I think I'm just going to have her rattle them off. So I would just love to hear, for our audience, Tracy retired 7 months ago.
Yep.
And you are serving as like a advisory director? Is that right?
Director. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, just touch on like what retirement looks like. I know you keep mentioning you're bored and that you've got so much time on your hands. So how have you been filling your time?
Well, it's one of those things where I think we all tell ourselves there's not enough time in the day. And now let me tell you, the day is really long. So I usually get up, I work out, I do some Zooms and some talk to, I'm still working with Goldman a little bit on some things, but I've been really trying to, and I think I mentioned this to you, Maddie, but see, I'm looking at the sports industry as an advisor and investor. Certainly women's sports is big. The, WNBA, just the sky got a whole new, it's really fascinating. So I've been spending a lot of time, and I know very little about media rights and sponsorships and how all that works. So I've been trying to educate myself on that. So I've been spending a lot of time talking to that. I've talked to some people about doing some public company boards, but and I'm taking tennis lessons and I'm playing more golf, but still then we're like at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm definitely going to find something, I think, sports related or advisory related. I felt like, one sacrifice I did May, because I missed a lot of course, my son's a freshman now, but I missed a lot of stuff. So my daughter's going to be a senior next year. So I plan to, despite the fact that she doesn't talk to me, I plan to like go to all her stuff and be around. But I'll definitely do something because I'm realizing that I'm not great without a schedule. Like I need to have, something to get me up and get me going and get my mind working and things like that. So I'll find something. I'm in no rush right now, 7 months later. But I will definitely, my guess is by this time next year, I'll have an advisory role or doing something, hopefully in the sports space, sports industry.
That's so cool. If it makes you feel better, my sister's 16 and she doesn't talk to my parents much either. So
okay, good. So it might be just that thing.
Yeah. Z, we've right.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
I said we've been there and not being very nice to our parents at 16,
Yeah.
17.
I don't know. I've always been pretty nice.
You're so stupid. You have been. Z's like the yes ma'am, no ma'am.
I know.
Yes sir, no sir. Like mommy, like what do you need me to do? Like she's the
Yeah. You're the poster child.
No, I'm not.
I don't have that at my house. In fact, she's gonna play lacrosse at Johns Hopkins, so she committed to do that. So we'll be going to see her. Hopefully, I'll get to see her play a fair amount. But like this is a perfect example. She decided not to do a fall sport at her high school, so she plays basketball and lacrosse at her high school. And so we were planning this family trip because my son has an internship. And so he's finished in July. She finishes her travel lacrosse in July. And we were going to go to Spain to do a biking trip, back roads trips, so it's road biking trips. Cool. And she decided a couple months ago she was going to play golf. She's never played 18 holes. Never. But they need another girl. She's a good athlete, but I'm like, Reese, that's not how that translates. Golf and being a good lacrosse player, and a basketball player, that's not the same thing. Like, no. Have you... So now she's blowing off our family vacation because she wants to do preseason golf. I'm like,
good for her.
Yeah,
good for her though. I give her props. Golf, like Z, we took you golfing for your first time. When was that?
That was not my first time.
Are you sure?
No, but I'm so positive. What?
Besides Top Golf.
No, it was not my first time.
Okay, all right, but it's not like an easy sport.
Take credit for
Yeah. But I tell you, like, you probably think I play a lot of golf because I'm playing tomorrow. I'm playing for a charity event tomorrow, but I hate it. I hate it because you hit one great shot and you're like, oh, this is great. And then, then it takes you another like 15 shots to get to the green. I'm like, I hate it.
And then it takes you like 4 putts to actually get in the hole and you're like, all right.
Yes.
Really humbling. Yeah.
It's the worst. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Golf's
so
not
this
my
should be
thing.
interesting.
I feel like a lot of sorry, no offense, like a lot of like older rich people either play golf or tennis.
Yes.
Hopefully I get old and rich one day and hopefully golf will not be that. I will play tennis 10 times over before I ever touch a golf club.
Well, I'm taking tennis lessons and my son played a lot of tennis and I have a whole new, do you play Z? I have a whole new respect for how hard tennis is.
It's so hard. And I consider myself like decently athletic and
Yes.
Yeah.
It's hard. I'm learning all kinds of things that I didn't know. And I'm also learning I'm really out of shape. But yeah, it's fun. And then the other thing, Maddie, you mentioned, I do a lot of nonprofit stuff. So
who for Tracy for the nonprofit stuff? I'd love to hear that.
So this organization you guys will love. It's called Team Impact. I'm on the national board for that. It's based out of Boston, but they have regional chapters, but I'm on the national board. And they basically take kids with chronic illnesses, whether it's cancer, cystic fibrosis, lupus, all kinds of things. And they pair them with an NCAA team for 2 years.
Wow. Oh,
so you have a signing day. You guys should Google it. It's awesome. Team Impact.
I know exactly. There was a little girl that did this for Oregon's volleyball team.
Oh, yeah. The Ducks, the Mighty Ducks. Have you seen that video?
Yes, I have. I know.
I cry every time I watch it. I've seen like 18 times.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's one, and I'm the treasurer for them also, and I love that. And then I'm part of an organization called Positive Coaching Alliance, which was started out of Stanford, and it's a little harder to get your arms around what it does, but essentially it tries to instill in coaches and parents, the how to be more positive, and and we do a lot of press and media and content around bad behavior by parents and coaches and and things like that.
That's really cool.
That's needed.
The national board is amazing. It's like Julie Foudy and all these all these people, and Phil Jackson. So that's kind of cool. And then I'm on the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Foundation Committee, and in their finance area, which is super fun. And just learning about how that organization runs, and then there's lots of benefits that go with it. Like we're going to Paris, and we'll go to LA, and it's just it's awesome. And then I'm on this nonprofit, which is really not my passion. All those are sports related, obviously. And then I'm on this organization called Uniting Voices Chicago, which is
a choir. I just did a story on this for my internship.
Did you really?
Yes.
Chicago Children's Choir it used to be. Josephine Lee is awesome. You're kidding.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Did you interview her? Did you talk to Josephine Lee?
No, I did not talk to Josephine Lee. One of the guys that used to be in the Chicago branch is starting his own branch in Lexington, and it's like Lexington United Voices. And he was like so passionate about it. It was so cool.
It's a great organization. It's just I don't have any singing talents or anything, but I love the organization and what they do. It's an awesome organization. And by the way, these kids are, they have each of the public schools and neighborhoods have choirs. And it's not necessarily, there's a mix of all, income levels and such, but a lot of it is Chicago city schools and neighborhoods. And then they have the Voice of Chicago, which are the really good singers that rise up from these other neighborhood choirs. They sang on Saturday Night Live. They've sung with Chance the Rapper. They did Obama's inauguration. These kids are amazing.
I used the clip from the Chance the Rapper performance on my package.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
It's amazing. So that one, and then I'm on the board of the Lincoln Park Zoo, which it's a great zoo. It's in the city of Chicago, and it's free. It's one of, I think, 2 free zoos in the whole country. And I'm the chair of the finance committee for that. But I spend a lot of time with that one too, because I love the zoo and I love conservation. I love all the stuff they're doing. So
that's awesome. That is so cool. Z's little brother, Chance, ironically, his name's Chance, is like the biggest zoo fan ever, right, Z? Like, they've taken him to zoos across the country, so he'll have to hit the Lincoln Park Zoo.
Yeah. If you come this way, Z, let me know. I'll get a behind the scenes thing. It's an amazing zoo.
That's
free.
I definitely will.
It's free.
Tracy, that's so cool. It doesn't sound like you are too bored. I feel like you got a couple going on still.
Yeah, there's a few things. There's a few things I'm doing, so it's good.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well, Tracy, one more question before I ask the final question. For everyone that will be watching this, what is the background? Like, what is your background? Like, it's Michael Jordan, obviously. Minecraft stuff. Yeah, there's just I'm curious.
It's street art. Look at that.
That's so cool. I was curious, and I figured everyone else would be. So
yeah, it's a really cool thing. We actually got it recently, so it's I don't even know who the artist is, but it's like kind of just street art.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
All right, Tracy, the big final question. What is one piece of advice you would give to all of the winning women listening right now? One best piece.
Oh, I try to live by this, and I think it's been invaluable for me. But if you're too big for the little stuff, you're always going to be too little for the big stuff when it comes. Mm-hmm. So if you're not willing to put in the work and do the hard stuff, little stuff, then you're never going to be ready when the big stuff comes around. So you got to do the work.
That's good.
Mic drop.
Yeah, there it is.
That's what we needed. That's a good way to start our week, I think, too.
Perfect.
Hey, Tracy, we appreciate it. This has been awesome.
This is great. Z, great to meet you. Maddie, good to see you. And
absolutely.
And let's stay in touch.
Please keep us posted if any of those organizations need. We would love to be a part of anything cool like that. So you just keep us in mind.
Yeah. Well, check out Team Impact. Maybe we'll get our executive director on, because he's fantastic, and what they're doing is so related to kind of not just women's sports, but sports in general, helping student athletes know there's more than just their sport, and they get really close to these kids, and it changes these kids' lives. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome.
Love it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Tracy.
Thank you
so
much.
Thanks, guys.